Just say you never told me. Got it. That's what I heard her whisper into the phone at 11:46 p.m. She thought I was asleep. I wasn't. I hadn't been sleeping well for weeks. Something was off in the house, not in a ghostly way, just in that gut-feeling way where your chest gets tight for no reason and you start triple-checking that the front door's locked even when you're home. I was lying on my side of the bed, back turned, blanket up to my nose. She always assumed I was out cold if I didn't snore. But that night, I was wide awake, eyes open, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. The kind of pounding you feel in your teeth. He signed everything. He doesn't even know, okay? She was pacing softly, barefoot, across the carpet. Her voice was low, but sharp, like she was scared someone else might be listening. Someone was. Me. Now look, I'm not what you'd call confrontational. My therapist, well, ex-therapist, I stopped going after she said I needed to be more assertive. Used to say I avoid discomfort like it's a sport. She wasn't wrong. I once took a 3-hour bus ride because I didn't want to correct a Lyft driver who went the wrong direction. So instead of sitting up and asking her what the hell she was talking about, I just lay there, still as a statue, blinking into the darkness and breathing as shallow as possible, trying to remember if I'd done something illegal, or maybe missed something in the fine print. She left the room 5 minutes later, thinking I hadn't heard a word. The next morning, she was all smiles. Made me oatmeal. She hasn't made me oatmeal in over 2 years. She even sprinkled cinnamon on top, cinnamon, like she used to do when we were first married. She kissed me on the forehead and said, "You've always been too good for me, you know that." And somehow I said, "Thanks. Thanks." That day, I couldn't work. I sat at my desk staring at spreadsheets and client invoices like they were written in a language I'd never seen. Something was happening. I just didn't know what. Yet. And then, it happened. Her lawyer called her that evening. She had the call on speaker, by accident, I think. She was cooking something loud, a frying pan crackling while she half listened. I was on the couch, pretending to read. I will never forget his voice. "Did you seriously not disclose this to me? Are you kidding me, Delilah?" Delilah. That's her name. A name that now tastes like metal in my mouth. She paused. I didn't think it mattered. It changes everything. He's entitled to. Then she picked up the phone and walked out to the porch. I didn't hear the rest of that sentence. But I didn't need to. Because 3 hours later, a certified envelope arrived at our door. And what I found inside didn't just change my view of our marriage. It rewrote the entire last 6 years of my life. The envelope had no return address. No stamps either. Just a clean, beige rectangle sitting on our welcome mat like it had been placed there by someone who didn't want to be seen. Delilah didn't even notice it. She was still on the back porch, pacing and yelling into her phone. Something about spinning it the right way and keeping him quiet until it's finalized. I didn't have the stomach to keep listening. My hands were already shaking by the time I picked up the envelope. It wasn't heavy, but there was something solid inside. I closed the door, sat on the edge of the couch, and opened it with a butter knife because I didn't trust my fingers to work properly. Inside were 2 things. A folded stack of printed emails. A thumb drive taped to the back page. No note. No explanation. The emails were between Delilah and someone named Morgan S. The earliest dated back 3 years. 3. Not 3 months. Not 3 weeks. She was already talking to this person while we were still going on weekend getaways and posting anniversary photos with #forever. The tone of the messages hit me like a punch to the stomach. Not just the content, the way she wrote. Lighthearted. Flirty. Like the version of her I hadn't seen in years. She told Morgan everything. How she felt trapped, how I barely left the house, how she wished I'd just go away quietly so she could start over without feeling guilty. She even joked that I was the human equivalent of a loading screen. That one stung. I read it twice, just to be sure I hadn't misunderstood. But the worst email? It wasn't even about me. It was a plan. A literal, line-item breakdown of how she'd separate everything during the divorce so I wouldn't catch on. She was coordinating legal strategy with someone who wasn't even her lawyer. This Morgan person was pulling strings behind the scenes. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop with the same energy you might use to disarm a bomb. I half expected it to be empty or encrypted. It wasn't. There were 5 video files. All screen recordings. And all of them showed Delilah logging into what I now know was a joint investment account I didn't even know we had. Turns out, While I was budgeting for off-brand peanut butter and canceling streaming subscriptions, she was siphoning out dividends from a portfolio I had unknowingly funded. She had set it up using my credentials from a payroll-linked investing service, then filtered all the gains to a side account under her sister's name. She literally stole money I didn't even know I had. I sat in silence for over an hour. Not crying, not angry, just numb. Like my brain couldn't compute the level of betrayal I was looking at. This wasn't just a marriage falling apart. This was espionage in yoga pants. Delilah came back in from the porch, saw the envelope on the coffee table, and froze. I didn't look at her. I didn't speak. I just clicked play on the video and turned the screen toward her. Her face went white like someone had pulled the oxygen out of the room. She whispered, "Where did you get that?" And I just said, "I was supposed to be the boring one, right?" She didn't answer. She grabbed her keys and walked out without saying another word. That was 12 days ago. She hasn't been back since. And tonight, I just got a message from someone claiming to be Morgan. He said we need to talk. The message came through at 3:12 a.m. No subject line, no greeting, just 5 words. We need to talk. Urgently. The email was from a burner account. The name field just said Morgan. No last name, no photo. But the signature had a single link, a dead Dropbox folder. Now, I should have ignored it. Every rational bone in my body told me to delete it, block it, forget this entire mess. But rational Clive had already left the building sometime between the thumb drive reveal and my wife vanishing without a trace. What was left of me was tired, wired, and twitchy. So I replied, "Talk about what?" Within 5 minutes, my phone rang, an unknown number. Against all my better instincts, I answered. The voice on the other end wasn't what I expected. It wasn't deep or cold or robotic. It was soft, shaky, almost apologetic. "Clive, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to get this far. I thought she was bluffing. I thought she was just venting." I didn't speak. I didn't breathe. "She told me you were emotionally abusive, that you'd emptied your joint accounts, that she was scared to leave. She said she had no support. I only helped her because I thought she was in danger." I finally asked, "Who are you?" There was a pause. "I'm Morgan Slater. We met once. At that New Year's thing. 2019. I was wearing that hideous velvet blazer." I remembered. Barely. Marla had dragged me to a party downtown. I had a sinus infection and stayed in the corner all night drinking sparkling water out of a wine glass. Morgan was the loud one with the bright laugh. I'd assumed they were a college friend of hers. Morgan continued. "She never told me you two had a shared investment account. She said she started that fund herself. And she said, well, she said you'd never notice if she moved things around. That you were a creature of habit." That part made my stomach twist. That was how Delilah saw me, not even a person. Just a series of routines and weaknesses to work around. Morgan then dropped something that made my jaw literally clench shut. She told me you had terminal lymphoma. I felt the heat rise behind my eyes. "Excuse me." She said you were sick, dying, that you didn't want anyone to know, that you were leaving everything to her because it was your way of quietly setting her free. She made it sound noble, sad, but romantic. There was silence on both ends for at least a full 10 seconds. "I'm not dying," I finally said. Morgan whispered, "I know that now." Apparently, Delilah had used that lie to justify everything. She convinced Morgan, and possibly others, that I was a ticking clock. She used it to explain the fast-track divorce, the urgency in liquidating accounts, the reason for hiding money under someone else's name. Because Clive wouldn't be around long anyway. And Morgan? He wasn't her lover. He wasn't her lawyer. He was her accomplice by manipulation. He had been helping her for months, setting up financial redirection, creating shell transfers through dummy accounts, even mailing the anonymous envelope to me when he started doubting her story. "She used both of us," I muttered. Morgan didn't argue. "Yes, but she used you worse. And I think she's not done yet." That was when he sent the second Dropbox link. Inside were receipts, transfers, PDFs of altered statements, a Google Doc where she literally laid out a checklist titled Phase 2, Post-Divorce Relocation/New Name, followed by a list of small towns in Canada. Delilah had been planning this for years. Not just the separation, not just the money, but a full reset, to vanish and rebuild a new identity, funded by the man she called a tired spreadsheet in human form. And the worst part? She wasn't working alone. Morgan said the name like he was afraid it might make me stop listening. Carla Barnes. I blinked. Carla? My Carla? As in the neighbor? Morgan hesitated. She wasn't just your neighbor, was she? No, she wasn't. Carla was the kind of person who knew the color of your curtains, what brand of soap you used, and whether or not your trash had been taken out late. She was nice, in the unnerving, too helpful way. Always showing up with extra lasagna, offering to walk our mail in, randomly popping by to water our plants even when we didn't ask. For a while, I thought she was just lonely. Divorced, no kids, retired early, that sort of quiet, suburban invisibility people mistake for harmlessness. Delilah always said I was paranoid, but now it made sense. Carla had always been around when things started going missing. Little things, at first. My W-2 from the mailbox, a password reset code I could have sworn I never requested, an insurance renewal letter that arrived opened but resealed with a glue stick. I thought I was going crazy, but now I saw it for what it was. Carla was more than an accomplice. She was Delilah's safety net. Morgan sent over screenshots of texts between them. Carla had been feeding Delilah real-time information about my habits, when I left the house, when I was in the shower, even what times I logged off my work laptop. She called it movement logging. I guessed to them, I was just a mark. An old, predictable dog who always walked the same route. But here's what really messed with me. She'd helped Delilah install a second router in the basement. A second router, hidden behind the old water heater. I only found it because Morgan told me to check for weird parallel traffic on my home network. I didn't even know what that meant. But I downloaded a scanner app on my phone, and it pinged 2 signals. One of them was mine. The other was named after our dog, who died 2 years ago. I went downstairs with a flashlight, and there it was, an old Netgear box wired in through a junction splitter. Carla had literally tunneled into our network. For how long? Who knows? But Delilah had access to every device in our house. Laptops, phones, even the smart TV. They could have watched me type my passwords, read every email, listened in. I wanted to throw up. I unplugged it, smashed it with a hammer, then stood in the dark staring at the broken plastic like it had personally betrayed me. In a way, it had. It had quietly been watching me live in denial. The next morning, I confronted Carla. I didn't plan it. I just walked across the lawn with a manila folder full of printed texts and screenshots. I knocked. She answered in her usual robe and slippers, coffee mug in hand, looking like someone's aunt who collects ceramic angels. I didn't even say hello. I just held up the folder and said, I know. Her face didn't change. She stared at the folder, then at me, then took a slow sip from her mug and said, I swear to God, you were never supposed to find out. That was it. No apology. No shock. Just resignation, like I'd ruined the end of a movie she'd already seen. I told her I'd go to the police. She said, do you have proof she broke any laws? I said I had Morgan. She laughed. He helped her. He's guilty too. And that's when it hit me. They were counting on all of us being complicit, twisted just enough that if anyone opened their mouth, they'd all burn together. They thought I'd keep my mouth shut. They were wrong. Because later that day, I got another message, this time from someone completely unexpected. And it wasn't about money. It was about why Delilah needed to disappear. By the time I got the third anonymous message, I had already stopped reacting to surprises like a normal person. I didn't jump. I didn't panic. I didn't even blink when I saw the subject line. You're in danger too. It was sent through Proton Mail, no sender info, no IP trail, no reply option. Just one short sentence in the body of the email. She didn't leave you for money. She left because of what she took. Attached was a zip file, password protected. No clues. No key. Just the encrypted file and a 7-character prompt. Try the name, she whispered. That should have made no sense. But my stomach dropped instantly because I didn't know what it meant. 2 months before the divorce bombshell dropped, Delilah had a habit. She'd fall asleep while watching these creepy, old, black and white detective films on the living room couch. Every time I came in to turn off the TV and cover her with the blanket, she'd mumble something in her sleep. The same name. I thought she was dreaming about a character. The name was Harwin. At the time, I'd even asked her about it the next morning. She shrugged and said, probably just a dream. I never pushed it. That was my thing, right? Don't push. Don't prod. Don't peel back layers. Just assume it's normal and keep paying the gas bill. So I typed in Harwin, and the file unlocked. Inside was a single folder, labeled Facility Footage, April 12, 22, Castle Ridge. Castle Ridge is a nothing town, about 40 miles outside of Cedarville. We'd passed through it once to visit her cousin's lake house. All it had was a gas station, a post office, and what looked like a shuttered factory behind a rusted chain-link fence. I never thought twice about it. I should have. The folder contained drone footage. Grainy, but clear enough to make out details. It showed the factory, except it wasn't shut down. There were cars, people, guards, cameras, and in one 7-second clip, a figure walking out of a side door, head covered, accompanied by two men in black jackets. The figure? Delilah. Same coat, same boots, same gold earrings shaped like tiny suns. She was carrying a silver briefcase and looking over her shoulder. The footage was dated 2 months before she filed for divorce. Why was she there? What was that building? I didn't know, but I knew who might. I called Morgan. At first, he didn't pick up. But after 3 missed calls, he finally answered, sounding groggy and irritated. Clive, it's past midnight. I just opened a file. Footage. Of her. At some facility. Castle Ridge. April last year. There was dead silence on the line. Then he said, "You need to destroy that." "No," I snapped. "I need you to tell me what she was doing." Morgan sighed like he'd just exhaled a decade of guilt. "She wasn't stealing from you, Clive. She was stealing from them. I helped her set up the money moves to hide it, but not because of you. Because she told me they'd come after her if she didn't disappear." "Who is they?" I demanded. But Morgan wouldn't say. He only repeated one thing, over and over. "You were never supposed to get dragged into this. You were just the cover story." That night, I didn't sleep. I just kept looping that phrase in my head like a broken voicemail. You were just the cover story. It suddenly made sense. Why she was so calm about the divorce. Why she pushed it through fast. Why she disappeared without a fight. And why her lawyer panicked when he found out what I knew. She wasn't running from me. She was using me to disappear. I was the decoy husband in her great escape. And the thing that chilled me the most? If she'd used me as her shield, whoever she'd stolen from might think I was involved too. The next morning, a black SUV was parked across the street. Engine running. Windows tinted. And it was still there when I got home that night. The black SUV didn't move for 3 days. It just sat there, across the street, 2 doors down, half-shaded under the skeletal tree we planted in a community gardening initiative 4 years ago. I watched it from my upstairs window like a child convinced there was a monster under the bed. But this wasn't imagination. It was idling steel, tinted windows, and the faint glow of a cigarette behind the driver's glass every night between 11 p.m. and 2. On the second day, I walked past it twice. No license plates. Not even temporary ones. Just matte black nothingness. The kind of nothing that was too deliberate to be legal. I pretended to walk my neighbor's dog, a poodle named Chip, who hates me, just so I'd have an excuse to loiter nearby and glance in. The driver was a man. Bald. Wide neck. Black jacket zipped to the collar. He never looked at me. Just kept his eyes forward, hands resting on the wheel like he was practicing stillness. I didn't tell anyone. Who would I tell? The police? Hi. My wife faked a life. Disappeared. May or may not have stolen something from a building in Castle Ridge, and now I think some shadowy people are using me as bait. Also, I alphabetize my sock drawer when I'm nervous. Yeah, that'd go over well. So instead, I did the most Clive thing imaginable. I started documenting everything. Every time the SUV moved. When the engine turned on. When the lights flashed. When the man inside left, which was rare, but he did, once, to buy a cup of coffee from the gas station down the block, which he never drank. I tracked it in a spreadsheet. Yes, a literal Excel file. With timestamps and notes. 12:08 p.m., passenger door opened. No one exited. 1:34 a.m., radio static briefly heard. 3:12 p.m., man adjusted rearview mirror, stared into it for 47 seconds. Obsessive? Maybe, but it kept me grounded. It gave me something to measure. Until the 4th night. That's when the SUV was gone. No tire tracks. No sound. Just vanished between dusk and dawn like it had never been there at all. I should have felt relief. But I didn't. Because sitting on my front step, plain as day, was a box wrapped in brown paper and tape. No markings. No label. I froze in the doorway. The air was sharp, like it hadn't warmed up even after sunrise. I stared at the box for at least 5 minutes before picking it up. It was light, maybe the weight of a book. I took it inside, set it on the kitchen table, and sat across from it like I was expecting it to start breathing. I opened it slowly. Inside, there was one thing, a burner phone. Old model. Gray casing. Rubber buttons. Already powered on. And a message on the screen. Stop talking to Morgan. He's lying to you. That was it. No threats. No demands. Just a direct contradiction to the only person I thought I could trust. I didn't even realize I'd started shaking until I spilled my glass of water across the table. The phone didn't get wet, but it didn't matter. I already knew I wasn't going to use it. Because the second I stood up to grab a towel, the phone vibrated. A new message. Delilah was supposed to hand off the package. She never did. And then, just 10 seconds later, she made a copy. That's when I remembered the thumb drive. The one I thought I'd broken in half after copying the emails. I tore through my drawers, my desk, my trash, and found both pieces. Still there. Still broken. But something clicked in that moment. Delilah never left things to chance. If she'd planned a vanishing act, faked stories, used Carla, used me, used Morgan, then she would have made backups. Multiple ones. And hidden them in plain sight. She didn't trust anyone. Not really. So I searched her old laptop. The one she claimed hadn't worked in 2 years. The one gathering dust in the linen closet behind a pile of mismatched towels and a broken hairdryer. I plugged it in. Screen flickered. Fans whirred. And after 5 minutes of sputtering startup, it came to life. There was one folder on the desktop. Unlabeled. Just a string of random numbers. Inside it. Videos. Dozens of them. Delilah. Talking to someone. Not Morgan. Not Carla. Someone I didn't recognize. A woman in a lab coat. Documents on the table. Vials. Blueprints. The word protocol mentioned more than once. And in the last video, dated 2 weeks before the divorce, Delilah looked straight into the camera and said, "If you're watching this, I'm either dead or I ran out of time." I watched the last video 6 times before I realized I wasn't breathing right. Delilah was sitting in what looked like a basement lab, concrete walls, no windows, humming noise in the background like some kind of generator. She wasn't made up like I was used to seeing her. No lipstick, no earrings, hair tied back. There was a clipboard on her lap and a metal briefcase open behind her. She kept glancing at the camera, then back down at her notes, like she was rehearsing lines she hated having to say. "If you're watching this, I'm either dead or I ran out of time," she said. Then she paused. Her lip twitched. Her hands were trembling. She wasn't the version of Delilah I knew, cold, polished, calculating. This version was raw, scared, human. She went on. "This isn't about you. Not really. You were just the cleanest way out. I'm sorry, Clive. I wish I could explain everything. But the more you know, the more danger you're in." She leaned closer to the camera. "But if you found this, then it means the transfer failed. And if the transfer failed, someone's looking for the copy. Probably them. And if they don't find it, they'll come after the last person who touched it. Me." She said me without saying my name. She reached behind her and pulled out a thick manila folder. She opened it toward the camera briefly, and I hit pause as fast as I could. There were schematics, maps, a floor plan for the Castle Ridge facility, but not as a factory, as a testing site. Biological hazard symbols were printed in the corners, and the top of one page had a red stamp. Project Harwin, Phase 3B. Harwin, the name she whispered in her sleep. The password to the encrypted file. The thread that had been following me this whole time like a shadow I didn't realize was mine. In the next segment, Delilah held up a small metallic cylinder with a glowing ring near the top. "This is the only prototype I managed to get out. I have no idea if it's stable. They told us it would be safe. But I saw the tests. I saw what it did to the primates. It's not safe. It's not medicine." Then she stopped recording. The screen went black. That was the end of the last video. But not the end of the files. Hidden deeper in the drive, in a tucked-away system folder, was something else. A folder labeled Clive, Do Not Open. I opened it. Of course I did. Inside were audio files, surveillance logs, phone call recordings, transcripts of conversations I'd had with Delilah, some recent, some from years ago. How long had she been recording me? Every fight, every joke, even the time I talked to myself while sorting old tax forms. It was all there. All organized by date and emotion tags. Emotion tags. This wasn't just deception. This was psychological profiling. She'd been building a file on me, for someone else. Suddenly, I wasn't just the husband left behind. I was the contingency plan, the fall guy, the one who could be manipulated, monitored, and then discarded when the time came. And that time might be now. Because that night, as I backed up the drive and prepared to call Morgan one last time, my house lost power. Not the neighborhood, just my house. My laptop went dark. My phone flickered and died, despite showing 42% battery just moments earlier. Every window in the living room lit up with the unmistakable red glow of brake lights. Multiple cars, at least 3, silent, parked with perfect symmetry in front of my house like pieces on a game board. Then, a knock on the back door. Not the front, not the side, the back, the one nobody uses. And a voice. Male. Calm. Too calm. Clive, it said, like a parent waking up a sleeping child. We need to have a conversation. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I didn't respond. I backed into the hallway, heart pounding so hard I thought my ribs would crack. I reached for the drawer where I kept an old camping knife, dull, mostly used for slicing fishing line, and grabbed it with trembling fingers. The voice came again. You weren't supposed to see the videos. But now that you have, you're part of this. I didn't move, because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. They weren't here to ask me questions. They were here to erase the last person who knew the truth. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I stood in the hallway with my back against the wall, the dull knife shaking in my hand, and waited for the voice to come again. But it didn't. Silence. Too much silence. The kind that stretches time into a wire pulled so tight it might snap. I counted to 30, then to 60. Then I crouched low and crept to the laundry room window. Just a sliver of space between the blinds. I pulled them apart just enough to see the driveway. Empty. The cars were gone. The lights? Out. No shadows. No sounds. Just my reflection staring back at me in the glass. Pale, sweating, still holding the knife like I knew how to use it. I didn't sleep that night, or the night after. But on the third morning, something changed. The thumb drive? Gone. Not stolen, moved. Hidden. Because I moved it. See, what I didn't say earlier, not to Morgan, not to anyone, was that the day I found those files, I didn't just copy them. I scattered them. Encrypted fragments sent to 5 different storage nodes across 4 continents. Backups on the blockchain. One fragment embedded into the code of an old GitHub project I hadn't touched since 2017. Another one buried in the metadata of a high-resolution photo I posted on an aquarium forum. Each piece useless alone, but together, undeniable. I don't know where I got the idea. Maybe paranoia makes you creative. But I knew this. If anything happened to me, the files would be reassembled automatically and emailed to every major journalist I could think of, plus 3 federal agencies, and for good measure, a few competitors of whoever was behind that facility. I didn't want revenge. I wanted insurance. And apparently, so did Delilah. Because on the 5th day, I received a letter in the mail. Real letter. Stamp and everything. No return address, but the handwriting, hers. Elegant. Controlled. She always made her capital G, like a violin clef. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No apology. No explanation. Just a handwritten message. You learned faster than I expected. That's good. Keep the backups safe. If they reach you, it means I failed. But if you're reading this without them knocking again, then I think we both made it. No signature. But I didn't need one. Delilah was still alive. She'd escaped. Not just from them, but from the identity she built with me. The life we shared, the lies she told, the system she played. And somehow, in her twisted way, she left a sliver of protection behind. For me. For both of us. I never saw her again. I doubt I ever will. But the SUV never came back. The power never cut again. And Morgan? He vanished from every platform the same week the letter arrived. Wiped clean. I went back to work. I changed cities. Smaller place. Quiet. I still alphabetize my spices, and I still overthink everything. But I also learned to lock my doors before I feel the need. I started therapy again. I actually listen now. And last week, I got a message from an unknown number. This time, just a photo. A cafe in Lisbon. Delilah's favorite tea on the table. No people in frame. Just the message, I'm safe. I stared at that photo for a long time, then closed it and deleted it without saving. Because I finally understood something. Some people are meant to disappear. And some of us are meant to survive them. I didn't win, but I made it out. That's enough. That's peace.